You know, when a democracy falls apart, it's almost never just one single event. It's more like a chain reaction, right? A series of dominoes. An economic crisis knocks over a social crisis, and that, in turn, sends the whole political system crashing down. Today, we're going to look at one of the most powerful examples of this in all of history, the fall of Germany's Weimar Republic.
Just look at this. This picture really tells the story. This isn't just some political rally. This is a society absolutely on the brink of chaos. You can feel the tension, the division, the sheer desperation in that crowd. The government was losing its grip, and the real fight for the country's soul was happening right here on the streets.
So, this is the big question, isn't it? How on earth could a stock market crash thousands of miles away in New York unleash forces so powerful that they would end up destroying a democracy and, let's be honest, change the entire course of the 20th century? Well, let's follow the dominoes, one by one.
Okay, so let's start with that very first domino, the spark that lit the whole fuse. And the crazy thing is, it didn't even happen in Berlin. It happened an ocean away, in New York City.
The Wall Street crash. For years, the American economy had been on fire. It was the Roaring '20s, a party that seemed like it would never end. But in October 1929, bam! That confidence just completely shattered. The stock market, which everyone thought could only go up, suddenly collapsed, and fortunes were literally wiped out overnight.
And the speed of it all was just breathtaking. You have Black Thursday on October 24th, when the market takes a massive dive. Then just 5 days later, it happens again, but this time it's even worse. This wasn't just a blip. This was the start of the Great Depression, a kind of financial pandemic that was about to spread across the entire globe. And that global crisis is what knocks over our second domino, Germany's economy. Now, lots of countries were hit hard by the crash, but Germany was uniquely vulnerable. Why? Because its recent prosperity was basically a house of cards, built on a very shaky foundation.
So here's the deal. Germany's economic recovery in the mid-1920s was fueled almost entirely by short-term loans from American banks. It was like a fire hose of cash. But when Wall Street crashed, that fire hose didn't just get turned off, it got thrown into reverse. American banks, now desperate for cash themselves, started demanding that Germany pay them back immediately.
The impact was immediate, and it was absolutely catastrophic. With no one in America buying their products anymore, Germany's export business just collapsed. It fell by a staggering 61% in just 3 years.
And of course, if you're not selling things abroad, you stop making them at home. Factories started shutting their doors. Industrial production plummeted by 58%. It was like the entire economic engine of the country just seized up and ground to a halt. And to give you some perspective on how bad that is, look at Britain. They were hit hard by the Depression too, but their industrial production only fell by about 11%. Germany's 58% drop, that wasn't just a recession, it was a full-blown economic apocalypse. So what does all this add up to? Well, total chaos. Companies went bankrupt left and right. The entire banking system teetered on the brink of collapse. At one point, the government actually had to shut down the banks and the stock exchange. Germany was in an economic freefall, and nobody could find the parachute. An economic collapse of this magnitude, well, it inevitably knocks over the next domino. Because a crisis like this is never just about percentages and stock market charts, is it? No, it's about real human beings. It's about what happens when the very fabric of a society gets torn apart. The official numbers were just horrifying. By 1932, 1 out of every 3 German workers was unemployed. Just try to picture that. Walk down any street and every third person you see has no job. But here's the thing. As bad as that sounds, the reality was even worse. You see, the official statistics didn't even count a lot of people, especially women who just gave up on registering. Most historians think that by early 1933, the true number of unemployed was closer to 8 million. That is a catastrophic level of joblessness for any country.
And this wasn't just about losing a paycheck. The German artist Leah Grunding put it perfectly. It was about the loss of purpose, of routine, of your dignity. As she said, wherever work disappeared, decay, malaise, and despair set in. It was a psychological crisis as much as an economic one.
And this was the brutal reality for millions. People lost their homes. Shanty towns, just like this one, started popping up outside major cities. Diseases caused by malnutrition, things like rickets and TB, they all came roaring back.
For so many people, life became a simple, daily struggle just to find enough food to survive.
The crisis was especially devastating for young people. I mean, in a city like Hamburg, almost 40% of young men had no job and absolutely no prospects. They were seen as a problem, a source of crime and chaos. And this right here is key. Extremist political groups saw a golden opportunity. They swooped in and offered these desperate young men food, a uniform, a sense of belonging, and, crucially, a target for all their anger.
And all of that social breakdown leads us to the final fatal domino. When a society is this broken, this angry, this desperate, it puts an impossible strain on its political system. And under that immense pressure, German democracy simply began to shatter.
The first political casualty was the government itself. This grand coalition, which was basically a team-up of the moderate parties, just fell apart. They were completely deadlocked on how to fix things. Should they cut unemployment benefits, raise taxes? They couldn't agree. So in March 1930, the whole thing collapsed, and with it went the last truly democratic government of the Republic.
So, the new chancellor calls an election, right? He's hoping for some stability. What he got instead was a political earthquake. The far-left communists did well, sure, but the real shocker was on the far right. Just look at this. The Nazi Party went from being a tiny, irrelevant fringe group with only 12 seats to suddenly having 107. Overnight, they became the second largest party in the entire country. 2 out of every 5 German voters had just backed a party that openly wanted to destroy democracy.
This chart right here, you can think of it as the death certificate for German democracy. Because the parliament was now so paralyzed by all these extremist parties, it became impossible to get anything done. So the president and the chancellor just started ruling on their own, using emergency decrees. And you can see the shift right here. By 1932, the elected parliament passed just 5 laws, while 66 were handed down by decree. Power was no longer in the hands of the people's representatives.
And when politics fails inside the government buildings, violence takes over on the streets. The paramilitary wings of the communists and the Nazis, groups like the SA, the stormtroopers, were basically fighting civil wars in miniature. Riots and political murders became common. In just the first half of 1932, political violence killed 159 people. And this chilling lyric from a popular Nazi stormtrooper song tells you everything you need to know about where things were headed. This wasn't about debating tax policy anymore. This was about identifying an enemy, promising liberation through violence, and gearing up for a brutal racial fight. Which really leaves us with this final, sobering question. We've watched the dominoes fall, right? From a stock market crash, to bread lines, to street fights, to the absolute end of democracy. It's a stark reminder of a timeless and dangerous political truth. When people feel like the system has completely and utterly failed them, when they lose all hope, they might just become willing to vote for anything or anyone who promises them a way out.